In this session, we're going to dive deep into individual philosophical systems, more details. So last session, we talked about the nature of the universe, so nature of the cosmos. And we classified there are four schools of thought primarily. First is those who believe the nature of the universe is real, it exists, which we call it as Sadvad. And then there is Asadvad, which believes in non-existence of the universe. And then there is a third category, which believes in the Asadvad, which is basically they believe that the universe is a combination of Sad and Asad both, which is real and unreal both. There are certain aspects of the universe which are real in nature. There are certain aspects that are unreal in nature, because things change, things gets destroyed, things gets created, and hence it is better to classify the universe into real and unreal both, rather than putting that into any one of the categories. And then there's a fourth category, which is basically, hey, we can't define the universe in any way. We can't define whether it is real or unreal. Hey, I can't define the nature of the universe in a specific in a specific category, and that's why they believe it's undefinable. In other words, we call it as Sadasad Vilakshan, which is also Vivartavad. So we saw that in our previous session, one of our previous sessions, and then we saw a quick overview of different philosophical systems in terms of the Vedanta, which is this. Which is basically, we walked through real quick. I walked you through real quick, giving overview of each and every Vedantic philosophy, including the Shankar philosophy, which believes in Dvaita or absolute monism, and then the Madhva Siddhanta, which believes in absolute duality or Dvaitvad. Then Ramanuja believes in Vishishtadvaita, or it's called as qualified monism or qualified non-dualism. And then we also understood, in a very nutshell, very high level, the Vedanta of Sripati or Vijnana Bhikshu, which believes in Vishishtadvaita or Avibhagaadvaita. And then the Bhaskaracharya's Mat, which is the combination of both duality and non-duality together. It's a combination called as Dvaitadvaita. And then ultimately, Vallabhacharya's principle, Vedanta, which is also called as the Shuddhadvaita or Shuddha Brahmavad or Tadatmyavad or Bheda Sahishnura Vedavad. There are multiple names of Vallabhacharya's principle. Specifically, Shuddha Brahmavad or Tadatmyavad or Sakar Brahmavad or Bheda Sahishnura Vedavad are the right terms to denote Mahaprabhu Vallabhacharya's principle. So this is what we saw in the previous session. All right, this looks good. Now, we are going to dive deep into each and every theory. And what basically we're going to do is I'm going to explain you the difference between each and every theory at a very high level again, right? So that you all can gain more insights and dive deep into understanding the nuances as well. And then you appreciate those nuances, you appreciate those differences, and primarily our objective is we all should be able to appreciate the differences between all these theories that I'm going to walk you through with, and compare and contrast with Vallabhacharya's principles as well, right? So the ultimate aim is to bring clarity in understanding what Mahaprabhu Vallabhacharya is saying. All right, so let's get started. So we discussed about the nature of the Brahman in the previous session, and then we classified into four categories. Great. Now let's go back to the same discussion and let's understand the nature of relationship between the Brahman and the universe. So that's going to be very important in understanding and diving deep into individual philosophical systems. So let's take a quick look into that as well. So the nature of the universe and the relationship between the universe and the Brahman is something that we should also understand. So there are again four categories. Similar to the nature of the universe, there are four categories. Here also, when it comes to relationship between the universe and the Brahman, there are primarily four categories, major categories. First category, which believes in basically absolute non-duality, which you also called as Advaitavad or Kevaladvaitavad, which is basically a Shankarite theory. And so that basically deals with the basic crux of that principle is that there is an absolute non-duality when it comes to the relationship between universe and the Brahman. Essentially what they are saying is it is such type of non-duality which cannot tolerate any kind of duality. It's such kind of singularity where you cannot tolerate any type of duality. Okay, and then so basically they don't they really consider Shankarite theory, specifically the Shankarite theory. They consider that there shouldn't be any kind of whatsoever, any flavor of duality, meaning the universe itself does not exist. Only phenomena or only tattva that exists is Brahman, which is the ultimate reality. And whatever differences that we see other than Brahman is basically illusionary in nature, does not really exist, because anything that is different from Brahman is something that does not exist in real. Right? So any type of duality, any kind of concepts related to the duality in terms of names, forms, and functions, any type of duality is what they are against of. They only value the singularity of the Brahman only, and hence, since there is diversity in the universe, there are different names, forms, and functions that we see, experience in universe. Hence, according to them, because they are different, because they are destructible, because they change every now and then, these things does not really exist, and hence they believe that universe is illusionary in nature. And so they call it as Vivartavad, which is also called as absolute non-duality or Advaitavad. Again, Shankarite theory. All right, let's move on to the absolute duality. This is quite opposite to the absolute non-duality is the absolute duality, which is the theory of Madhvacharya. And Madhvacharya says that the universe is completely different from the Brahman. The nature of the universe is completely different from Brahman. However, the universe exists. And the Brahman also exists. Brahman is also real. The universe is also real and unreal, both in nature, according to Madhvacharya. And so they believe in absolute dualism, absolute duality between the Brahman and the universe both. That is the meaning. Okay. Now there are different types of relationship between the creator and the creation, which is the universe on the Brahman itself. Right. Whenever, for example, let me give an example. Whenever we talk about something about creation, let's take an example of creating a building. The building is made up out of raw material. So one of the components that the building is made out of is the raw material. So the raw material is also a part of the creation. And then the actual creator, which is an instrumental cause of the building. Those laborers who build the building, who take this raw material that are being given to them and then build out the structure required to build the building. Those laborers also are the cause of the building, but they are different type of cause of the building. Those laborers come as part of the instrumental cause of the building, and the material out of which the building is made, soil, and any other material or all of the materials that is used to making the building or building are as categorized as a raw material cause of the building. Similarly, when God created the universe, did God become the raw material out of which the universe was made? Question, right? Or is God just merely instrumental cause, or just making sure that the building is made, but he himself did not get involved as a raw material in making the building, right? So Madhvacharya says that God is only the instrumental cause of the creation or the universe. God is not the raw material cause of the the universe. In that way, they both are completely different in terms of names, forms, and functions. Universe is completely different from that ultimate reality. That is called as Advaita. And then there is third school of thought regarding the relationship between the universe and the Brahman, which is, well, Bhaskaracharya and other similar acharyas proposed the principle of duality cum non-duality, which is also called as Dvaitadvaita, both Dvaita, Dvaitavad. And they said, well, it's not really the case. The relationship between the universe and Brahman is something which is different from being absolutely dual or absolutely non-dual. So they don't agree with Kevala Dvaitvad or Keval Dvaitvad. What they propose is, think about a tree. Think about, conceptualize the tree. A tree is singular in structure, isn't it? In that way, it is single entity. But then, if you analyze a little bit more into the components of the tree has leaves, branches, different shapes of the branches, different colors at times, different colors of the leaves, and so on and so forth. So from that perspective, the leaves, there are components of a tree, including leaves, branches, fruits, flowers, and so on and so forth. So there are different parts of the tree. In that way, there are differences within the tree itself, but tree as a whole, as a structure, is one. Right? So there is a singularity. A tree is singular in nature, but then there are different types of components within the tree, which is basically manifested in terms of leaves, flowers, fruits, branches, different shapes of the branches, and so on and so forth. Hence, in that perspective, there are dual. There's duality. So similarly, Bhaskaracharya says that the relationship between the universe and the Brahman is such like a tree. Or they believe that there is some part which is singular in nature and some part which is dual in nature. And that is what summarizes the Dvaitadvaita. And then there's a fourth category. Fourth category says, well, we don't want to define the relationship between universe and Brahman in just merely Dvaita or Advaita, because it simply cannot be defined in just two terms. And that's why they say that it is Sadasat Vilakshan, which is completely above and beyond being definable in terms of the Dvaita or Advaita or duality and non-duality. I can't really describe it. I can't really define it in that way. Hence, it is Sadasat Vilakshan, which is above and beyond just merely Sad and Asad. It is undefinable. So there are basically four different schools of thought in terms of regarding the relationship between the universe and the Brahman. Now let's dive deep individually into each philosophical system now. So I'm going to show you another one. Okay, so let's talk about Shankar Theory, which is absolute monism. Yes, if you kind of visualize in diagrammatic way, in diagrammatic representation, for the ease of understanding, Shankar Vedanta can be summarized or diagrammatically represented as part of this diagram. You can see here there are two circles, one for this that denotes singularity, and another circle that denotes the duality. And you can see there's no intersection between these two circles, right? So that means that whichever is a part of the singularity circle never coincides or never overlaps with the duality. So essentially what I'm trying to convey here through this diagram is that there is such type of duality which can never have singularity, and there is such kind of singularity which is completely devoid of duality. So complete absence of duality in the singularity, and same way complete absence of singularity in duality. They don't believe in duality, as a matter of fact, to start with. They only believe in singularity, and such kind of singularity, and that is shown by the shadowed portion of circle A here. And so they believe only in singularity, and such kind of singularity which is completely devoid of any kind of duality in terms of names, forms, and functions. Brahman does not have any kind of diversity. Brahman does not have any kind of names, forms, and functions. Brahman does not have any characteristics. Brahman cannot have any kind of qualities. Brahman does not have any name, form, function. Brahman, that ultimate reality, does not have any kind of diversity in itself. Because moment you visualize any kind of qualities in him, some kind of duality will definitely come out of that, and then you ultimately would have to agree to agreeing to some kind of, or you have to accept these some kind of some flavor of duality which they don't like, right? So Shankar theory believes in absolute monism, also called as Kevaladvaita, such type of singularity where there's complete absence of duality. And so there you will see in this diagram, these two circles of singularity and duality never intersect. They're completely different. Yeah, I hope this makes sense. Let's move on. Okay, so before I move on, so the type of the duality that the Shankar Vedanta considers is, and just giving you more nuanced information here, whatever differences or diversities that you still experience and see in your life, like this book is different than this book. So there are two books that I'm holding right now. I am different from this book as well, so there's diversity there. There are differences that you have in terms of the objects that you have around you. There are differences in experience that you might have about different types of objects around you. And so there's a diversity. How do you justify that? Are they unreal? Well, they say that yes, this is absolutely illusionary in nature. They're not real, or they're not real, or they cannot be really defined into real, unreal. That's what they are saying, right? So they are absolutely illusionary in nature. So any type of diversity in the names, forms, and functions are basically illusionary in nature. Okay, so they are not ready to accept any kind of duality. There's only singularity. Right? So that's why it's called as absolute. The underline the word absolute monism or absolute singularity. Underline the word absolute. Okay. All right. So now let's move on to the next one. The next one is Madhva Vedanta. Let's go to the Madhva Vedanta. Okay, so here's a diagrammatic representation of Madhva Vedanta, or also called as Dvaitadvaita. In Dvaitadvaita, what we are gonna do is what they say is the Brahman, which is ultimate reality, is totally different from its creation, which is the universe, because Brahman Brahman consists, that ultimate reality consists of divinely qualities, and versus the universe is materialistic in nature, physical in nature, limited in nature, and hence you can never equate the universe with the Brahman, and that's why they're completely different. And by the way, Brahman only, as per that principle, Brahman only gets involved as an instrumental cause of the creation. Brahman never becomes the raw material cause of the creation. And so you can understand their philosophy through this diagrammatic representation. So these two circles kind of sums up their principle, wherein what we are trying to wherein they say that multiple dual aspects creates one singular aspect, right? And the singularity resides within the realm of the duality, right? So there is a singularity that you can imagine, but that is in the foundation of the duality. So duality is real. Things are different from each other. The creation is completely different from the creator, which is the Brahman. There is no similarity whatsoever between the Brahman and the creation. Okay. All right. So that sums up the Madhva Vedanta. Now let me go to By the way, if you have any questions, feel free to ask the questions in the comment section. Okay, let me go to Ramanuja Vedanta. Ramanuja Vedanta. Okay, so Ramanujacharya says Ramanuja Vedanta is also like this. Ramanuja Vedanta also believes that multiple different names, forms, and functions were totally different from each other. The Brahman and the universe is completely different from each other. However, multiple objects, there are multiple components that makes up the Brahman. There are three components that makes up the Brahman: Jad, Jeev, and Ishwar. They all three together makes up one singular entity called as Brahman. Yeah, but then these Jad and Jeev are completely different from each other raw materially as well. Each individual Jad is also completely different from other individual Jad. Similarly, each individual Jeev is completely different from each other individual Jeev. And each Jad and Jeev hence is completely different from the ultimate reality, which is Brahman. Right? So it is like you can imagine as again I have given the same example in previous session. It is basically you can imagine a mechanical like a car and the mechanical parts out of which car is created. Each mechanical part is different from each other raw materially. However, all of these mechanical parts, when they combine together, they form one singular entity called as car. In that way, it is singular in nature. Right? Similarly, when I show you my hand, like how many are these? How many are these? Some people might say, oh, just one hand. Some people say, well, there I see 5 fingers. But some people say, no, I see 5 fingers and there's a palm and there are lines inside that. So some people say, well, I see multiple things. Some people say, no, I just see one thing, which is one hand or one wrist, right? So it's a perspective. There's a difference in the perspective. Some people might say it's just one single entity, which is a holistic structure called as this, right? Some people might say, oh, well, I see 5 different things, which are 5 fingers when you show your hand. And some people say, well, I see more than that. Similarly, here in Ramanuja Vedanta also, they say that Jad, Jeev, and Ishwar together create a holistic structure called as Brahman. However, each Jad is different from other Jad. Each Chid is different. Each individual soul is different than other individual soul. And each Jad and soul also are completely raw materially different from the Brahman. In that way, multiple dual names, forms, and functions, when they come together, they basically create the one holistic structure, holistic Brahman, singular, which is called a singular Brahman. Okay. All right. So that is the Ramanuja Vedanta. Now let me go to Sripati Bhagavad Padacharya and Vijnana Bhikshu's Vedanta. Now in that, it's completely opposite to what Ramanuja Vedanta says. Ramanuja Vedanta says that the singularity is within the foundation of the duality. Here the foundation is singularity, which is Advaita, and the duality emerges from that Advaita. Right? So duality is a subset of the singularity, wherein the Ramanuja Vedanta, the singularity was the part of the duality as a superset. Here, duality is the part or the subset of the singularity, right? The singularity is the base. Okay, that's a difference, diametrically opposite stand. Ramanuja and Sripati Vijnana Bhikshu Vedanta is completely opposite stand, and specifically they explain their principle in one of the examples, like ocean and the wave. So the wave never gets never gets independent from the ocean itself. It always stays with the ocean. However, when there is the wave emerges from the ocean and is based on the substratum called as ocean, right? It never leaves its substratum, and it still has a separate appearance above the ocean. So similarly, similarly meaning the similar to the relationship between the wave and the ocean, the creator, which is ultimate reality, and the universe or cosmos, as they both related to each other similarly, right? Meaning the Brahman basically creates the universe, but the universe remains on the substratum of the Brahman, and the created the creation basically does not leave the substratum ever, and then it just gets merged in the substratum at some point of time, similar to the wave gets submerged into the ocean back in some time, right? It just comes out for a time being and then merges back, right? Similarly, and then the wave is also made out of the same raw material as the ocean, because they are essentially droplets, right? It's a gross form of a dense form of the droplets, right? What is wave? Is basically they're not materially different than the ocean, because ocean is also made out of droplets, water, and the wave is also made out of the water. So materially they are both same, but still yet they have still a separate existence when they emerge out of the ocean, emerge on the top of the ocean without leaving the ocean. Similarly, when the creation comes out of that Parabrahman, it stays on the substratum of that Parabrahman every time. And raw material also, the creation is same as Parabrahman. However, it has some separate existence as well when it manifests. And then when it submerges itself, when the creation submerges into the ultimate reality, you get the singularity, right? So that's the base. The duality or the diversity of names, forms, and functions that you see in the universe never violates the singularity principle, never leaves the base of Brahman, never leaves the base of singularity. That is essentially the essence of their principle, which is almost similar to Vallabhacharya's principle, by the way. It's very, very near to what Vallabhacharya is saying. Almost similar. The nearest principle, any Vedant which is nearest to Vallabhacharya's Vedant is Shripati and Vigyan Bhikshu's Vedant, by the way. Just FYI. Okay, now let's go to the next one, which is Bhaskaracharya. Now, Bhaskaracharya says, well, it is a combination of both singularity and duality. So there's an intersection point between the two circles that I'm showing you here, which is one circle representing singularity, another circle representing duality, and then you have a intersection point between both the circles, and that intersection point is actually what they consider as part of their principle, which is Dvaita Dvaitavad, which is the combination of Dvaita and Advaita both at the same time. Meaning Dvaita is also real. There is some essential difference between the creator and the creation, and hence it is Dvaita. And there is some essential similarity or singularity between the creation and the creator, similar to the tree and the components of the tree, which I explained to you earlier as well. Right? So Bhaskar Vedanta is also kind of more or less very near to the Vallabhacharya's principle, which is also called as Tadatmyavad. So Tadatmyavad, Mahaprabhuji's principle, and Bhaskaracharya's principle, almost they are also very, very much similar, though not same, but they are very much similar for sure. Okay, so there are two principles. It says there are two Vedants which are very, very near to what Vallabhacharya is saying. One is Bhaskaracharya's Vedant, which is Dvaitadvaitavad, And another is, as I mentioned earlier, which is Vishishtadvaita or Avibhagaadvaita. These two principles, or rather three Vedanta, are the nearest Vedantic principle to the Vallabhacharya's Vedanta. However, there are differences. All right, so now let's come to Vallabhacharya's principle. Right, so all right, here's Vallabhacharya's Siddhanta. Now you can imagine, right? We started with Shankaracharya's theory, which showed two circles with completely non-intersecting, with completely different, without any intersecting points. There were two circles in the Shankarite theory, one for Advaita, another for Advaita. These two circles were completely different from each other. You remember? It's completely opposite stand taken by Vallabhacharya, where he says, well, whatever singularity is duality is equivalent or is identical to the duality, and whatever is duality is identical to the singularity, because the same Brahman has manifested in multiple names, forms and functions, and same Brahman is essentially and instrumentally involved, is an instrumental cause and the essential cause or material cause of the universe. So same Brahman has taken many forms in terms of names, forms and functions, which you see is part of the creation. At the same time, these names, forms and functions and the Brahman, at the same time, this Brahman is materially involved in, is the material cause of these names, forms and functions, just like gold and ornament. The gold is gold is the cause and the ornaments is an effect. And the ornaments are not different from gold raw materially. Same way, creation is not raw materially different from the creator, which is Brahman. At the same time, the Brahman desired to become one to many, and hence it manifested in different names, forms and functions, but essentially everything is Brahman. But at the same time, we cannot deny the separate existence of these names, forms and functions. So we are not same as Advaitavad, because they deny the separate existence of names, forms and functions. Because remember, they say whatever is different from the Brahman, which is names, forms and functions, whatever is dual is illusionary in nature. However, that's not the case with Vallabhacharya's Siddhanta. All the dualities that you see is the form of that Brahman, and hence they are real. And they are raw materially same as Brahman. Whatever function that you see is raw materially same as Brahman. Whatever name that you see is raw materially same as Brahman. It's just that the Brahman wished to create different names, forms and functions with different functionalities, and activates the functionalities, sometimes activates it, sometimes deactivates those functionalities. And that's why we see difference between these different names, forms and functions as part of the creation. So we definitely believe in manifestation and unmanifestation of the functional, of the functionality of each name, forms and functions. However, raw materially, all names, forms and functions are same as Brahman. And hence we believe in the theory of identity, which I have shown you in this equation, in this diagram. A equals to B. That is mathematical equation which you can use to summarize easily Vallabhvedanta. A here denotes Advait and B denotes Dvait. And what Vallabhacharya says is that essentially is the theory or relationship of identity between Dvaita and Advait. So the theory is also called as theory of identity or Tadatmyavad. Okay, so it's kind of a very high level overview of each and every philosophical system that I went through. Okay, and I just want to show you a quick overview of this. All right, so here, all right. So here, this diagram basically summarizes. Now, if you combine two diagrams, which is one is the nature of the universe, which we had discussed. There are 4 categories, and the relationship between the Brahman and the universe, right? If you combine both of these charts together, both of these diagrams together, you get 8 combinations, meaning 8 permutation combinations. Right? There are 4 combinations for the nature of universe and 4 combinations for the nature of with the relationship between the Brahman and the creation. Right? So essentially, you get 8 different permutation combinations, and Mahaprabhu Vallabhacharya's Vedanta can be summarized in terms of he proposes in Sadvad, meaning all names, forms, and functions, and the creation really exists. Hence, we are Sadvadi. And however, you cannot define the relationship between the creation and the creator in terms of Dvaita or Advaita, and hence it is Dvaitadvaita Vilakshan, undefinable, and hence it is a theory of identity. Yeah. So that if you combine both of these theories together, you as a product, you will get Vallabh Vedanta, just for the ease of understanding. Right? Similarly, Dvaitadvaita plus Sadvad will give you Bhaskaracharya ji, Ramanuj Mat, and Shrikant Mat. Similarly, if you add up Dvaitadvaitavad plus Sadasadvad, you will get Shripati Vijnana Bhikshu Vedanta. Similarly, Dvait and Sadasadvad, if you combine them, you'll get Madhva Siddhant. And Advait plus Sadasad Vilakshanavad, you'll get Shankara Vedanta. So just giving a quick overview. I'll dive into the details more into the coming session as well. However, I hope this session was useful. If you have any questions, I'm sure you will have many questions. I'm sure this was a lot for you. I'm sure this might be overwhelming. You might be overwhelming for you. And for the new beginners, the beginners or newbies, it might look a little bit more overwhelming. But anyways, if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comment section.